shall I do that? Hang on, I'll do that myself. Hang on one tick. Right. All right, are we rolling, Charlotte? I think we are, hey? Yep. All right.
The delay.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, just a technical glitch here. And all right, I can see. Can you all hear me now as well? I think you can, by the sound of it. Yep, see me and hear me. All right, awesome. Cheers, guys. All right, hey, this is Marc for Uprise. Before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Especially extend my respects to the Gubbi Gubbi people on whose lands I'm sitting today, and their elders past, present, and emerging, and obviously all the other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people present with us today, and everyone else, obviously, welcome. This is going to be a half an hour seminar about mental threats, one of the modules in the Uprise app. My name's Marc. I've been a counsellor and a coach for 17 years now, 16, 17 years with Uprise. And what I'd like to do, I'm not sure if I'll get time from all of them, but look, post questions in the chat. The people at Uprise are always interested in finding out why you actually joined this webinar. But also for me, if you got questions that you want to have answered, whether I can answer them now or later on in an email or in a chat message, doesn't really matter, but post your answers, post your questions, and let us know where you're from, what you're doing, and what got you interested in attending this webinar. We'll get to them very later on. And that will probably be it. Look, this is the first slide. What we're going to talk about today is one of the modules in the Uprise app called mental threats. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is pretty specific, so I can't cover everything. So this is purely going to be on the mental threats side of stuff. So if you're interested in mindfulness and how our brains work and how mindfulness interacts with that and how we can become calmer, make sure you walk through all the modules in the Uprise app and just go through them one by one. You'll come at some stage across the mental threats part, and this is that specific part. But what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about the brain, just to give you an idea. Won't keep it too long, but it gives you a good foundation for what we're talking about. And I'll try and keep it as short and sweet as possible. Once you've got an understanding of how your brain operates, you can actually start to manage it a little bit better. So in hyperspeed, we'll talk about the brain as a three-part, and it's actually like a fist with everything around it. So 3 parts: brainstem, spinal cord. Don't worry about that too much. It's the server room. It keeps you alive. Now, in between that and the newest part, about 200 million years old, lies part of what we call the fight-flight system. It's our limbic system. The limbic system is purely designed to keep you alive physically. That's its job. And in simple terms, I call it the security guard of our lives. If we see ourselves as a business or as a company, this is your SECI, your security guard. Its only job is to keep you alive. So anything that enhances your safety will be good and must be gotten. Anything that threatens your safety is not good and must be avoided or killed or get rid of. So keep that in mind. It uses your senses to scan the environment constantly for things that make your life more safe or less dangerous. And then on top of that, about 100 million years old in evolutionary terms is the neocortex. Now, the neocortex is what we would call the thinking brain. It's the part that we currently are listening and me talking on this webinar with. It's the part of our brain that makes decisions. It's the part of our brain that does a pro and con analysis of stuff. It's the part of our brain that looks at long-term perspectives, at past perspectives, and try to marry things up. It plans, it makes decisions about stuff. It is the more logical, common sense brain. Now, the first part, forget that one. It does its job. But these two work together, and they have a different way of communicating with us. Now, they both absolutely have a role within us, and the security guard is a very important part of our brain. So we definitely need it. In our lives, we can use it, and in the good old caveman times, I'm trying to get to the next slide here. In our good old caveman time, the security guard was a very important part of our survival mechanism. When you are in a situation where saber-toothed tigers come at you, where all sorts of weather events come at you, where there's all sorts of warring tribes that come at you, you need that security guard brain in order to stay safe, to either run away as fast as you can, to fight them as much as you can, or to make arrangements, when it deals with weather and other things, to stay as safe as we can. And that makes complete sense. So as we progressed through evolution, we got that more prefrontal or the neocortex part of our brain, but the security guard remained very important and dealt with a lot of stuff in our life, and we definitely need it. So safety, anything, food, sex, sleep, group belonging, and staying in a group are all things that we should have and that are good for us. All the stuff that endangers that, rejection, being thrown out of a group for whatever reason, or physical threats, must be avoided at all costs. And how does it do that? The security guard brain, well, it has strong connections to our endocrine system, to our hormonal system, and it sends pretty big loads of hormones into our system that indicate that something is a really good idea or a really bad idea. That's a simplistic but kind of true way of talking about that part of our brain. So it does that through sending hormones like cortisol and adrenaline through our system that indicate to us that something is very wrong. But it also does that by sending hormones like oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine in our system that generally indicate that everything is really right, and we should keep that. So physical survival for the caveman was a very important thing, must have, and is actually the most important thing. So therefore, that system in those times worked really well. Now, the problem is that much of our lives nowadays are not necessarily physical threats anymore. They're still there, obviously, and we need to take them into account. But the problem, the challenges that we have as 21st century beings in this case are more of a mental, emotional nature more often than not, than they are of a physical nature. We make up stories about all sorts of stuff. We make stories, and stories is a word I use very respectfully, by the way. We make up stories in our own head. We think about things that threaten our survival, as in what happens if I lose my job? What happens if I get sick? What happens if my boss doesn't like me? What happens if my partner doesn't like me? What happens if my health deteriorates over the years and I become dependent on the government? Or, also on the positive side, it's like, well, if I just get lots of money, then I'll be happy. Or if I just have a big house, then I feel safe. Or if I have lots of cars, then I'll be happy too. And if I have lots of friends, lots of people around me, then I feel safe as well. Those stories we make up, they don't necessarily have anything to do with our physical reality. They are stories that are constantly spinning in our brain, and we worry about them a lot. And there's things in there like self-worth, finances, family, etc., etc. Now, the problem with all that is that we try and control our life, and control is actually the word we use. So our security guard brain, if we don't manage that through the neocortex, our more CEO part brain, the boss, if we don't manage that properly, our security guard brain says, look, by controlling the situation, we'll be fine. We'll start to build up more and more fences around our life, around our fortress. We will try and get everything safe. We'll try and ward off danger as much as possible. In general, or in simple terms, it's the fight-flight system. So when it comes to danger, we either fight it or we run away from it as fast as we can. And when it goes to the good stuff, like we'll collect of it as much as we can, like a squirrel just collecting nuts for winter. We do the same thing, and it's all driven by that security guard brain. Now, when you look at the material side of stuff, the material world, that's quite a good way of doing things, and the CEO brain, our prefrontal neocortex, kind of agrees with that. When there is a problem that you can actually solve because it's a problem in the outside world, your car is stuck, you can't get to work, or your car is broken down, you can't get to work, and now you fear that you'll get reprimanded about that. Well, get your car fixed. If you've broken a leg or something like that, and you think that there's going to be a problem with your health or with doing your work or whatever there is, it's like, well, go get your leg fixed. Go to a doctor and sort it out. So controlling a situation is very useful in normal situations when it deals with the material world. And our security guard brain and our CEO brain, the neocortex, both agree on that one. They think, yep, that's actually a really good way of dealing with stuff. On other stuff, when it comes to the more immaterial world, our thoughts and our feelings and our threats, our mental threats, our what ifs in life, that control doesn't really work as well. Yeah, and we start to get into a vicious cycle. There's a bit of neurobiology about that. I won't bore you with all the details, but because of that slightly older, more primitive security guard part of our brain, it actually also has access to our senses and to our motor skills a little bit more as well. So sometimes shoot first, ask questions later is a proper approach. And our bodyguard, security guard brain actually has access to that a little bit more. So sometimes it can make us do stuff purely from a survival point of view. Don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that yourself, where you've jumped away from a car without really realizing what was going on. It doesn't have to be a car, obviously, but something where you impulsively or instantly acted, and then later on, a couple of seconds later, wondered, that's the CEO brain, what just happened? But it was very, very good reason. Well, that's actually that technique or that skill that our body has and our brain has to sometimes take control of the situation in order to keep us safe. And that's for very good reason. It's not such a good reason once it deals with mental threats, because that's where our crocodile brain, well, not crocodile, our security guard brain, a more primitive brain, will try and secure the situation and control it as well. But it's fairly hard to control something that is not necessarily real when it's only pretended. But it still will try to hijack our normal thinking and hijack our actions. And that's when we get into impulsive acting. If we think that downing a bottle of wine is a good way to release some stress in life, then our security guard brain will actually prompt us to do that, even though we know that is potentially not a good idea. If our security guard brain thinks that shouting at someone because you're angry at them is a good idea to stop the conversation and shut people up, then your security guard brain will most likely prompt you to do that, even though the CEO brain might go like, hang on, that's my boss or that's my partner. That might not be such a good idea. But it's that whole idea of, shoot first, ask questions later, that our security guard brain is quite happy with, but our normal brain, our more logical thinking brain is not. But then sometimes we're already behind the eight ball and we have to make apologies, or we have to backtrack, or we have to make good on a situation. So you get stuck in a cycle where the more power and the more sane power our security guard brain is getting, the less we become involved, and then we do stuff. We maintain particular habits that are not good. We keep doing certain things that we know are not useful, and we're constantly asking ourselves what's going on, but we keep doing it. So the what's going on part is the more sensical part, the more common sense part of our brain asking that, where we just keep getting involved in this not so good way of doing stuff. Now, the problem with all that is that we have learned to turn actual experience into words. Words are a good thing. It's me describing stuff to you now, so words are necessary. But what we've done is that we have used, or we as a species obviously, have learned to use words as symbols for pretty much everything. We use them to describe our feelings, we use them to describe emotions, we use them to describe events, we use them to describe thoughts, we use them to describe pretty much everything. Now, external words are things like text and speech. Internal words are what we call thoughts that are rambling through our brain all day long at lightning speed. And these thoughts have a particular symbolical value. In acceptance and commitment therapy, and that's a modality I really like and adhere to a lot, thoughts we call stories. The stories that run through our brain, those are the thoughts we think, and they then elicit pictures in our brain, images and mental imagery, and they can also create, through that hormonal system that we have, can also create physical sensations in our bodies. Now, have you ever tried to get rid of a bad feeling? Have you ever tried to not think about something, to actually control your thinking to the point like, I should not think about it, forget about it, forget about it? It doesn't work. Same if there's a classical example. If I would put a gun against your forehead and say, look, right now for the next 10 seconds, you must not be afraid, because if you become afraid, I will shoot you. You will not be able to control that much. You will be afraid. It's a normal reaction. And that's that idea in our heads. We cannot control the internal mechanisms of our head, of the thoughts as much. They just keep rambling and rambling and rambling. And yet we still try and maintain control and do more with it. So what do you do with that? Now, the idea is stop assigning meaning to words. Make the words, the stories that we use, less important. Take them less seriously. Not that you want to completely ignore them, but we put so much importance on the words we use in our brain, on the stories that ramble in our brain, that we assign so much meaning to it that our security guard brain, in a sense, is constantly reinforcing that and becoming more and more anxious or angry. So look at this, for instance, a quick lesson in Greek. I had Greek when I was a young boy. Now, here are two words in Greek. Don't know if you know what they mean, but the word agape in Greek, for instance, means love. It's the Greek word for love. And the word miso, what's spelled there, is a Greek word for hate. Now, if you don't know Greek and you had no idea what those words meant before I told you the meaning of them, they were just scribbles in space. So the word agape and the word miso in Greek, if you don't speak Greek, had no meaning. But that's what our brain does. It assigns meaning to particular words, and then those words start to become the representation of the actual event, regardless of whether the event is taking place. So by you even thinking of the word, thinking of the context of that word, you'll start to get that reaction in your body and in your brain that might make your security guard go completely upset and then keep rambling and rambling about it. So most thoughts are just what they are. They are thoughts. They are stories. They are stories, opinions, beliefs, ideas, models, biases about stuff. Some of them are true, and then we call them a fact. But most of those stories in our heads are just stories. They are what they are. Stories about the past, stories about the future, stories about me, stories about you. They don't have much to do with the actual event that is taking place right now. And that becomes a problem when we start to what they call fuse the story with the reality. And that's what we all do. We all think we can predict the future. Like if this happens, if this keeps happening in 5 years, we'll all be stuffed. Or if we don't solve this, then it'll be a problem. Or if I just keep doing this, then I'll be rich or I'll be happy. We don't know. But we make up these stories and we assign truth value to them. We think they are true. And that's a process that we call fusion. Now, because words in themselves as thoughts already have meaning, just saying those words can have strong power. And that's where, when the mental threats come in, just those words or just those sentences or phrases in themselves have a big effect. So saying to yourself, I am hopeless, I am a failure, or I am so bad at this, will produce particular feelings inside you because of the meaning that we've attached to the words hopeless, failure, bad, etc. That will make you feel potentially quite bad. Whereas things like I'm awesome, I'm lovable, I'm a great person, potentially could make you feel good. On the other side, if you feel really bad, then saying something that is so opposite, like I'm awesome, could actually make you feel worse. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that. But that's the problem that we often see, that the words in themselves become the meaningful experience. So what do you do about that when we have stories about everything? How do you deal with that sort of stuff? Well, there are 4 techniques that I want to give you today, and I'll have to keep it short and sweet. One of them is to actually, instead of just saying the sentence, I'm not good enough, to stick in front of it, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. So if I'm sitting here and I'm doing something and it's not going the way I want, it's like, oh man, I'm such a failure. Instead of doing that, think I'm having the thought that I'm just a failure. What it does, it starts to what we call diffuse the thought from the reality of that thought. You start realizing that thoughts are just thoughts. They're words spinning through your brain, like sometimes a really good radio channel, but sometimes a really crappy radio channel. They're thoughts. So just to put that one in front, I'm having the thought that can actually help you to diffuse that slowly but surely. The second one that I'll want to give you as well is what I would call the attitude of gratitude. It's the idea of not taking a thought that seriously and actually saying to your mind, thanks, mind. So here you are sitting, you're rambling on and on and on. Just go, thanks, mind. Thanks for your input. Yeah, I appreciate it. Because that thought is as much true as, for instance, the thought, I am a failure is one, but I'm a strawberry is another. And where's the difference? Just thank your mind for whatever goes on. There's no real truth to one or to the other unless you give it a lot of truth. So sometimes if you find yourself thinking or ruminating, just saying, look, thanks, mind, that's okay. Or you can call it, and that's that attitude of gratitude as well, you can call it the story and actually thank it for the story. It's like this is the I'm not good enough story, or the I really can't do that story, or the I'm such a bad friend story. If that's something that keeps rolling around in your brain. And just thank your mind for sharing that story with you without attaching too much truth value to it. The next one on that one is that thoughts are not causes. The way you feel doesn't mean anything particularly about what you're going to do next, even though we think it does. And the simple answer or the simple description of this one is, can you feel a particular way, nervous, for instance, and still go ask your boss for something? Or can you feel upset and still maintain cool and calm and collection, when it comes to describing that to someone else? Or can you be very angry on the inside for whatever reason and still maintain a calm voice when you talk to someone? Same thing with taking action in life. Can you be very nervous and still agree to do a public speaking gig for someone? What we seem to do is that we say, okay, I have thoughts running around in my brain. They make me feel a particular way physically. I have all sorts of mental images about that don't look good. And that's when I'm going to stop or not going to do things. Whereas, thoughts are not causes says, well, you can feel a particular way and still move through that, do something about it. So that's something you can use when you're faced with something that makes you feel a bit yucky on the inside and say, well, can I still do it? Can I still act as if it was different? Can I act in spite of? And the last one I want to discuss with you today, that's a very mindful way of looking at stuff. It's an acronym, RAIN, R-A-I-N. When you are rolling around in your brain and this stuff is going on, can you actually recognize that, what's going on? Actually stop and recognize that this is I really can't do this and I'm an incompetent story. Thanks, mind. I don't have to do anything with that. That's the A is, can you actually allow that experience to be there? Realizing that experiences are just experiences. Thoughts are just thoughts. The radio channel is just a radio channel. It pumps out music and lyrics, but it's not necessarily the truth. So can you allow that to be there? The I then stands for, can you investigate that with kindness and compassion? Can you actually look at that and go, okay, thanks, mind. I know you're worried. I know we're upset. It's my security guard brain. I know it sees some sort of threat in the future, but I don't really have to do anything with that. To then N is, well, natural awareness, or not identifying with that experience, to then say, right, I'm feeling this. I know I'm feeling this. There's potentially even a good reason for feeling this, but I'm not going to step into that one. I'm not going to allow myself to get caught up by that one. I'm going to act differently. So I'm not going to let this thought be the cause of something else. I'm going to make a decision to do it differently. So those four are quite useful tools. Again, it's all very compacted, all compartmentalized into the mental threats assessment or mental threats module. There's way more about it, but these are four really easy tools to use to stop yourself from fusing whatever you're thinking with an actual reality. Because most likely It is not like the cavemen that were constantly facing real threats. We are most of the time in our comfortable world facing mental, emotional threats, and they're not real, not yet. So can we just consider them to be not real and start diffusing from that? So the usefulness of that is, or let me recap, is like our brains are actually lagging quite behind our current evolution as a species. And events we turn into words, and therefore these words become stories, and these stories start to affect us emotionally, mentally. And our idea is the usefulness of diffusing means that we can start to rip apart our sense of reality from what is actually happening right here, right now, and see this for what it is, just a collection of thoughts that ramble that we can apply some kindness and some compassion and mindfulness to without constantly getting caught up in them, which is just driving, well, most of us, myself included, sometimes completely crazy and causes all sorts of feelings we don't have. So that's it for me on this one. Like I said, the mental threats module, quite compact. If you have questions about it, put them in the chat. I might be able to answer one or two, but definitely jump on the Uprise app and go through all the modules where you'll find this one as well. It's a good one to actually look at together with the Observer Perspective and other mental or mindfulness webinars. And if you got questions, post them in the chat, post them back or send emails, and then I look forward to seeing you next time. And if you got some feedback, I'd love to hear from that as well. And that's it. I think back to you, Charlotte, maybe.
I don't know if you've got any questions. I haven't seen any come through. But thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed that. And please share some feedback on the link.
All righty.
Thanks, Marc.
Thanks. No worries.
Bye.
See ya.